In Buddhism, numerous spiritual forms exist. Perhaps the highest ranking of these is the cosmic Buddha Dainichi. Dainichi's physical manifestations include the 5 great Myo O, Gozanze of the east, Gondari of the south, Kongoyasha of the north, Daitoku of the west. Fudo, the figure being created at the Maryland Institute, is the central of these 5 and the most common. Translated from Japanese, the name Fudo Myo O means immovable king of light, in this case, light being perfect knowledge. In 1985, a plan was set in motion which would enable a group of 3 Japanese sculptors, Yasuhiko Hashimoto, Junichi Ito, and Isao Yanagimoto, to travel to America and build a 33-foot sculptural representation of the Fudo Myo O. Thanks to the support of Maryland Institute President Fred Lazarus and prominent Japanese businessman Koji Oshiba, the sculptors were able to acquire the necessary resources to complete this demanding project.
We're very pleased to have it here. We're really grateful to the support that Mr. Oshiba, the funder for the project, has provided, as well as many of the supporters in this city and in this country as well have provided to the project to make it happen.
However, there was one major barrier to overcome before any work could begin. A studio space large enough to accommodate the construction of a 33-foot tall Fudo simply did not exist. Fortunately, the architectural firm RTKL had a solution.
The project was brought into the office non grata to the Institute because the principals in the office thought that it was important to give young people an opportunity to express themselves in a smaller design scale. And then we had a jury come in that included principals from our firm, as well as the president of the Maryland Institute. And they chose the design that you see here. And it really hasn't changed too much from the original concept. However, the building has gone through several iterations and come down to what we have now and what is being constructed at the Maryland Institute.
Once the sculptors had arrived and the studio was near completion, a ceremony was held on site, and the people of Baltimore were officially introduced to the project. At this gathering, guests were encouraged to chip away at the wood to be used on the project. Traditionally, this gesture brings good luck to both the sculpture and its creators. Each of the 3 sculptors engaged in this project bring a specialized skill and viewpoint with them. Yasuhiko Hashimoto, 36 years old, began negotiations for this project in 1985, upon completion of a smaller Fudo built in Japan.
全く同じ表現ができますね。
I wanted to come to the Maryland Institute to introduce Americans to Japanese art and to show this process to the students and faculty.
In 1973, after graduating from high school, he became apprentice to Mr. Saito Goma, probably the best-known wood sculptor in Japan. Under Sawada, Hashimoto learned the bulk of his technical skills as a master woodcarver. After the completion of his apprenticeship in 1983, he continued to sculpt using the Yosegi Zukuri carving method.
始まったばっかりですんで、これから
We enjoy demonstrating the process to visitors. When people come in the studio and watch, we have contact, person to person. This is very small, but I believe it could be a beginning toward world peace, communication between 2 cultures.
Since his master's death, he has continued sculpting traditional images, like the Fudo Myo O, always maintaining the integrity of the ancient techniques passed on to him. Isao Yanagimoto, 40, graduated from Shiba Commercial College in 1973. Shortly thereafter, he, like Hashimoto, became apprenticed to Saito Goma, a relationship that would last until 1981. And while his specialty is Japanese-style lacquering, his contribution so far has been in different areas.
While I do carve for this project, actually I'm more of a producer. I'm a negotiator.
His reasons for working on this project are also steeped in Japanese traditionalism.
These days, our culture is dying. There are so many Americans who want to see Japan. When they do, they're disappointed. So I have to show how we used to be. The Fudo helps in this.
Jinichi Ito, 39, began a 10-year apprenticeship to Matsubara Gumi in 1966. During this apprenticeship, he learned about making Japanese temples and shrines. From 1982 through 1987, he collaborated with Hashimoto and Isao to build the Fudo in Japan.
We each have our own interpretations of the image, our own thoughts about the sculpture. The project is a real trial for me, in terms of technique. I want to use everything I've learned over the last 20 years on this.
As a master Japanese carpenter, his skills are crucial to the rest of the sculpting team. He begins the project by inspecting each individual cedar board. He then forms two piles, one of acceptable wood and one of unacceptable. From the good pile, the Fudo Myo O will be created. A small polyurethane model of Fudo was used to construct the larger figure. The miniature Fudo was marked with pencil guidelines in preparation for cutting. When the guidelines were complete, a butterfly saw was used to slice the model into millimeter-thin sections. Each section represented, in miniature, the thickness of the wood that would be used. The shape of each section was then traced onto graph paper. Next, these small scale outlines were transferred to a corresponding grid of larger squares on the cement floor of the studio. Plywood stencils were then made from these larger shapes. The completed sculpture will consist of 4 units: the head, the body from shoulders to feet, the arms, and a rock-shaped base. Due to their size, each unit must be built in halves that will later be joined with dowels and cables. The first unit to be assembled is the head. Each half consists of 14 layers of yellow cedar, glued together with Elmer's wood glue. These halves are joined together with wood dowels and steel cables. Following this attachment procedure, the completed head is raised to an upright position for carving. The next unit to be built is the body. This unit demands twice the number of layers as the head, 58. Again, the layers of each half are glued together. This process is done over a 10-week period. After additional hollowing of the interior and smoothing of the adjacent surfaces of the two halves, the sculptors are now ready to undertake one of the more challenging aspects of the procedure. While the process of attaching the body halves is identical to that of the head, it is complicated by several factors. 1, the weight of each half is nearly 2 tons. 2, the entire weight is supported in mid-air by only 2 nylon safety straps. 3, the length of this unit is 5 times the length of the head. 4, each dowel, 25 in all, must line up exactly with its corresponding hole. On November 12, 1990, all of these elements combined to make the joining of Fudo's body an intense and momentous experience for all. Once the joining was completed, the sculptors then raised the body to a vertical position. On November 18th, approximately 1,000 people gathered to witness the Saito Goma fire ceremony, held to commemorate this stage in the sculptor's progress. The ceremony began with speeches from local officials and others associated with the project. A Japanese archery demonstration followed. Four monks arrived from Japan to conduct this ancient traditional ceremony, assisted by 16 Maryland Institute students. A procession of these participants marched to the central ceremonial area. Following this, ceremonial objects were placed on an altar to be blessed.
Items that have symbolic meaning. I will try to explain as many of them as I can during the ceremony. The arrows are representative of shooting against evil. Sword symbolize the ego. Sticks symbolize the practice of...
Arrows were shot to the 4 points of the compass to ward off evil. Two students reenacted a ritual axe fight. And finally, torches were lit and the fire was ignited. As the smoke enshrouded the Fudo, breathing life into it, small wooden sticks were consumed by the fire. Inscribed on the sticks were wishes from the crowd for peace and personal happiness. Following the completion of the arms and base, a year-long process of carving was undertaken, employing the Yosegi Sakori method. This style of carving, which dates to the 11th century AD, consists of 4 distinct stages. Stage 1 is referred to as the Ridori stage. This includes all of the preparatory activities viewed so far, from the inspection of boards through the lamination process. Stage 2, or arabori, is defined by the use of a large shovel-shaped chisel struck with a mallet to carve out a rough general form. Stage 3, kozukori, or the intermediate stage. Here, smaller handheld chisels, again driven with a mallet, are utilized to bring definition to the roughly carved forms. The final stage, or shiaji, involves very light pencil-weight chisels used by both hands, pressed against the defined areas to create a smooth finish on the sculpture. Throughout the building stages, the Maryland Institute sponsored tours for area schools to visit and interact with the process. Through the cooperation of the students most closely associated with the project, children that visited were able to ask questions of Hashimoto and gain insight into another culture. As the carving neared completion, another phase was undertaken. This time, the craftsmanship was out of the sculptor's hands. The eyes were to be made of blown glass, sized specifically for the Fudo's eye sockets. These were created by Jerry Hovanek at his studio in Washington, D.C. As 1993 began, only the completion of the painting and decorative gilding remained to consider this incredible task complete. After 3 years of searching, an appropriate and complementary space for Fudo had yet to be identified.
As Hashimoto was finishing up the sculpture, he and I had a number of conversations about where the piece would be best placed once he was finished with it. During these conversations, he made it very clear that his priorities were to donate the piece to anyone who would provide the best kind of home for it and would be interested in maintaining his commitment to increasing understanding between the Japanese and American people. Shortly after we had had these conversations, Mary Lanier, who was an art consultant working in New York and working with a company called Becton Dickinson, called me to ask if some of the principals from that firm and the architect who was working on a new headquarters building could come down and look at the piece. They looked at the piece and were very excited about it for their new headquarters building. After they had made a decision of their interest, I went and visited the building, and shortly thereafter Hashimoto did the same. All of us felt that it was the perfect setting for the sculpture, and that Becton Dickinson represented the kind of host for the piece that really could provide the kind of ongoing commitment that Hashimoto was looking for.
As these arrangements were being worked out, the sculptors were busily engaged in the last phases of the painting and gilding processes. As seen here, all paint was mixed by the artists in small amounts from dehydrated pigments and an extremely caustic lacquer. The gilded trim was created from thin sheets of gold leaf, custom cut by Ito. These strips were then applied by Yanagimoto and student assistants. In April of 1993, nearly 3 years after the residents of Baltimore first welcomed the artists, they gathered again to say farewell.
When I got to Japan and began trying to learn about things Japanese, one of the most difficult ideas to come to terms with was the idea of ambivalence, of being able to hold two emotions, conflicting emotions, inside of yourself at the same time. I think today is a real prime example of that sort of experience. I feel deeply, deeply ambivalent about this day. I'm very, very happy that the Fudo is completed and as great a success as it is. I'm just as sad to see it go, and with it, people who I've come to know and really love as friends, Hashimoto, Isao-san, Jin-san, all the people that have spent time in my house, played with my kids, taught me how to shoot a bow, helped me in ways beyond measure. I'm going to miss them terrifically. I feel like part of my family is leaving. I wish them the best of luck. Ganbare nacha. Thank you very much.
At this ceremony, wishes were written on slips of paper that would be sealed inside the Fudo's body during its permanent installation. Following this, the sculpture was hauled in segments to the corporate headquarters of Becton, Dickinson and Company, located in Franklin Lakes, New Jersey.
We have 3 atriums here. This atrium was created with a reflecting pool and with this niche in which we planned someday to have a piece of sculpture. We never thought it was going to be something as magnificent as this. This gift to us arrived to fill the niche, and our niche was built on a grand scale. We never had heard of any piece of sculpture except perhaps the statue of Athena in the Acropolis that was of this size. And we ended up with it here.
The installation would be supervised by Becton Dickinson's Ron Freshy and would require 3 long days to complete.
We had to lift it up from the access road into a door on the side of the building, come through the building about 200 feet of corridor to Atrium 2, where we had to enlarge an opening to bring it into the pool area, since the statue torso is 27 foot in length. We had to select a route that was straight, where there was minimum turning of the large piece, and the openings that the statue had to go through were very important, because the building is very highly finished corridors and opening.
Let's get it straight. Go ahead. Come on. Just like that. He doesn't like it. Oh, you all right? Yes, keep going. Come on. Come on down, Mo. You want your hands away. You line it up over there, Tom? Yes, sir. Come on down.
After the installation of the statue, the sculptors completed their work by inserting the sealed box of wishes into the body. Later, when asked about his feelings upon seeing the Fudo in its new home, Hashimoto, despite the presence of an interpreter, answered in English.
I was so happy, and so I never stopped my tear. So I couldn't stop my tear because I don't know why, just happy. I was just happy.
On April 21st, 1993, fully 3 years after arriving at the Maryland Institute to begin this enormous project, Hashimoto, Ito, Yanagimoto, and their patron Oshiba assembled with approximately 150 guests in Atrium 2 for one final ceremony.
It gives me great pleasure to welcome our guest to Becton Dickinson and Company this afternoon. And on behalf of the people of Becton Dickinson, not just here in the United States, but around the world, I accept with gratitude and respect this extraordinary work of art, an emblem of cultural harmony.
My wish is that the current CEO and future CEOs here take good care of Fudo Myo O. It is like our child. We are leaving, but we know it's in good hands. Following comments by a number of speakers, the ceremony came to a close with Hashimoto's father playing traditional Japanese music.